Hello everyone, it's Vivi and welcome to a Kingdom Hearts video. There's a lot of stuff to go over in this video, so I really do hope you guys enjoy this one. So with that being said, let's get straight to the point. Let's first begin with the summary of Melody of Memory, especially the new cutscenes we have after, the musical segment. If we go back to the scene from Limit Cut, Riku and the gang at Radiant Garden, Riku explains that Kairi was pretty much willingly put to sleep in order to examine her heart. By doing so, she hoped that they would be able to find clues about Sora's whereabouts. Melody of Memory goes through the memories of Kairi, memories connected to Sora's. Kairi fully narrates the story of this game, and fun fact, originally Chirithy was supposed to be the narrator for this game. Now, if we don't count the new 20 minutes worth of cutscenes of the game, narrating is a way of showing how we're actually exploring Kairi's memories, hence the name, Melody of Memory. Now for the new scenes, Kairi is asleep at Radiant Garden and she dreams about waking up in the final world, where she later meets Riku and the fairy godmother. She explains later on that she's aware of the final world, but for now, let's not focus on the fairy godmother. We'll focus on that one later. So what happens next is Kairi's childhood flashbacks come rushing back into her, being sent to Destiny Islands by Ansem, trying to seek out a Keyblade wielder. This cutscene is a reference to Ansem's reports in Kingdom Hearts 1, where Princess of Heart was sent away to try and find a Keyblade wielder. Now Old Man Xehanort appears in Kairi's dream. Kairi is fully aware that he's not real, that he could be a memory or an illusion. Xehanort explains that the final world is created by the memories in her heart. From my understanding, since she remembers this place with Sora, her dream brought her to this place. Since the final world is close to the verge of death, we can say that sleep is connected to the final world, and dreams are connected to sleep. Now Kairi eventually transforms into Sora, only physically. His voice cannot be reached according to Xehanort. Xehanort believes he knows where his heart is, however. This we can link it to the scene from her childhood. If you arrive in a world that's neither of light nor darkness, but somewhere on the other side, your task will be far from easy. This basically implies that there's a world out there where you're lost, that no one can hear you in this world. Xehanort appears to glitch. By the way, you might ask, why Xehanort in the first place? Why are Kairi's memories manifesting as Xehanort? Well, 1, Xehanort dates back to her childhood in Radiant Garden, and 2, everything that's happened to her and her friends, it all comes back to Xehanort. So yeah, right here he appears to glitch, change forms, Ansem, Xemnas, the robe guy. Then we get Ansem, restating that line, leaving her a clue. Now why is this glitch happening in the first place? Remember, Kairi's heart is being examined, so I'd like to believe that this data glitching of sorts is due to that. Now Kairi's all confused, doesn't understand the clue that Ansem left for her. In other words, the clue that her memories left for her. Whatever she's feeling in this scene is what many of us Kingdom Hearts fans feel like all the time when it comes to Kingdom Hearts.
What does that mean?
Here is another thing you're probably wondering about. What do these shards or fragments even represent? If you pay closer attention, its shape reminds us of when Sora was going through the power of waking, trying to locate Kairi, when, of course, he wound up in Scala at Kylum. What this flower represents really is trying to put something together. In this case, methinks, the shards represent fragments of Kairi's memories she found in her heart, like memories that had faded away, until she wound up in this place via her dreams. As Old Man Xehanort disappears, another shard appears. What all this represents, like I said, she's trying to put her memories back into one piece. Like how she forgot about her childhood. Once she put the pieces back together, she remembered. Once she's awake, she reports back to the gang, who is studying her heart. Ienzo tries to understand what it could possibly mean and repeats what Xehanort told Kairi. Then we have Evan also reiterating another thing Xehanort told Kairi. Your voice can't reach us. I'm certain of where your heart is. Ienzo then assumes the Realm of Darkness, but he feels that clearly ain't the case. Now why would Ienzo in the first place think of the Realm of Darkness? What we've learned from the series, the Realm of Darkness, I mean your voice can't really be reached on the outside. What the Realm of Darkness is, well, if one's heart is connected to the outside person can reach you. Example, how Diz impersonated Ansem and allowed Riku to travel to Castle Oblivion with that card. The thing is, how did Diz even know Riku in the first place? How were their hearts connected? Well, I'd like to believe this stems from the fact that Sora's connected to Riku. Diz probably used that opportunity to try and locate Riku in the Realm of Darkness, just floating around here lost. Even if your voice can't be reached, Xehanort was talking about the other side. Neither light or darkness, so it can't be the Realm of Darkness. So that right there, Ienzo believed Xehanort was not talking about the Realm of Darkness. Ansem the Wise tries to understand that world on the other side of our world, of reality. Unreality? A fictional world? It's beyond their comprehension, sadly. Riku shows up with apparently clues on Sora. Well, technically the fairy godmother, per Jensen's request, explains what's about to happen. And that's what Riku was trying to talk about. The fairy godmother explains they need 3 keys. 1. Kairi's examined memories. 2. Riku's dreams. And 3. The final key, which we'll talk about later in the video. Yes, we finally are getting closer to what the fairy godmother meant in this scene in Limit Cut. The scene from Kingdom Hearts 3's Remind DLC. By the way, all of these clues, these keys, they're about, finding Sora. As for Riku's dream, he dreams of this large city with tall buildings. Perhaps what Xehanort was talking about. That fictional world. Then we go back to Ansem the Wise. He explains that the Realm of Light, Darkness, in between, are on our side. The same includes data worlds, memories, and dreams. A world in which voices cannot reach. It's a world outside of our reality. In other words, unreality or fiction. The fairy godmother can reach the final world, apparently. I mean, dreams are her specialty after all. Like I said before, dreams and sleep intertwine. So naturally, those two things are connected to the final world, which is close to the verge of death. Now I like this. I like seeing the fairy godmother interact with Kingdom Hearts characters. That means more Disney characters involved in the actual plot of Kingdom Hearts. I hope they keep this on. Now the fairy explains that the stars are people who died with strong hearts, until they're ready to move on. The fairy godmother explains that the Nameless Star comes from the other side. As for how she knows about this, or how she even discovered Nameless Star, is completely unknown. Nameless Star. Her form was apparently taken away from her. She was able to find the final world as a way to remain safe. This mysterious girl explains that she knows Sora, and that she's met him here before, and we did see that in Kingdom Hearts 3. Which is, by the way, a missable cutscene if you're unaware. Since we're talking about this Nameless Star, let's dive a bit deeper. Let's go back to the first scene of her with Sora. Sora stumbles upon this star and says, "Whose heart are you?" Mystery Girl replies, "No one's anymore. They took away my name, everything about me." They could imply a person. Who did this to her? It's a complete mystery, it's up in the air. We really don't know much about this girl. Her heart resides in the final world since it pines for another. Now in Melody of Memory, it's made clearer what she's doing here. That she basically is hiding here so her heart doesn't get stolen. That person who she's pining over apparently has been changed beyond recognition. His heart replaced by another. She believes if he regains his old self, he'd be distressed by her absence. She chose to stay here, where he can find her. At first, many of us believed this was Strelitzia, who got struck down by darkness taking over Ven in Union Cross. Since I'm bringing up Union Cross, we finally see Brain's Keyblade being the Master's defender. Now going back to the secret reports in Kingdom Hearts 3, Ericus is a blue blood according to Xehanort, a descendant of someone from the Age of Fairy Tales. Putting 2 and 2 together, it's made more evident that Brain is perhaps related to Ericus. You know, because they're wielding the same Keyblade. Now going back to this particular scene from Dark Road, Brain could have been Ericus's grandfather. So yeah, I just wanted to squeeze that in. Back to the point. Many got curious about Nameless Star, and then Nomura reassured that more information about this mysterious girl would be revealed eventually, aka Melody of Memory. Sora reassures that her believing will make it happen. Now, a somebody did this to her. Not a heartless or a nobody. She probably has absolutely no idea what Sora is even talking about. If Sora sees this person who she's pining over, he'll tell him about her whereabouts. And Sora gets surprised by her answer being the name of this guy she's waiting for. Later on in Remind, we realize that this girl is the girl from Verum Rex. How do we know? This scene from the secret ending when Sora meets Yozora. Some like to call her Stella. The new Stella. A character which was part of Nomura's original vision of Noctis' story, aka Final Fantasy Versus 13. Stella, in the end, got replaced by Lunafreya for Final Fantasy 15. Why was she replaced? Well, director of Final Fantasy 15 Hajime Tabata explained they canned Stella. They didn't want to recreate Stella as to not ruin expectations, so instead they went with a brand new character, Lunafreya. Some even believe that Risu Shimizu, the Japanese voice actor for Nameless Star, was the voice actor of Stella. But this isn't confirmed, this is just pure speculation. Now what's with all this Yozora changed beyond recognition, his heart being taken over by another? Well, I'll take this opportunity to talk about the secret ending of Remind, which I haven't done like ever. Sora recognizes Yozora from Verum Rex. Fun fact, Verum Rex is Latin for true king, which is similar to what the box cover of the video game Verum Rex says, which we'll look at later. Yozora recognizes Sora's name, saying he's heard of him. Sora believes Yozora is real after all, but Yozora says this is not the real world. How is Yozora aware that this is not the real world? I take it someone like the Master of Masters told him something along those lines, who we see standing at the corner top of a building looking up at the moon. Sora eventually finds himself in this place, as depicted in the secret ending. After all, Xehanort did say he knows where Sora is, so this should take place after their fight, technically. We should all be aware by now that Yozora is technically asleep in this scene. He's dreaming up this place. Okay, but wait a minute. If Yozora originates from the other side of the world, aka the fictional world, which I'll talk about more in detail later on in the video, stay tuned, how is he able to reach Sora, if what Xehanort told us is supposed to be true? Well, in this case, I believe it's different because Yozora is dreaming up the place. Sora, I believe Xehanort feels that he's not asleep. Like, if you're physically standing in the other side of the world, the fictional world, you cannot reach the final world. But if you are asleep, you can do so via dreams. That's all I understood. I may be completely wrong. Now, as I was saying, Yozora dreamt up of this place, the final world. Seeing as how dreams and sleep intertwine, it's possible to end up here physically. I mean, that's the scenario with Kairi pretty much. She was willingly put to sleep and she physically winds up in this place. Okay, now the question is, why is it night version of the final world? I feel this is a manifestation of Yozora's dream, taking shape as nighttime. Yozora wonders how Sora can even recognize him as Yozora, and Yozora also wonders why he's using Sora's name. Seeing as how Yozora tells him that this isn't what he actually looks like, I mean, he might be assuming that Sora also doesn't look like himself. If this happens to Yozora, perhaps it happens to others. Or, since we don't know the girl's name, I'm referring to the Nameless Star, Sora could be the name of the girl, and he's wondering why this person is using her name Sora. Fun fact, there's cut dialogue in Kingdom Hearts 3's demo, Rex mentioning the names of Yozora's friends which we saw in Verum Rex. As for the girl's name, it is still unknown. Now the final world switches to what appears to be Shibuya, and I'll get to that later. Also, Yozora accidentally wound up in this place and went through some trials. Yozora was told to save Sora. Some might say, wait a minute, trials? Is he going through the Reaper's game from The World Ends With You? Because it's the same location as The World Ends With You? No. Nomura explained that Shibuya mentioned in Dream Drop Distance is not the same as the Shibuya we have in this secret ending. Whatever trials he's put through, I'd like to assume it was the Master of Masters, since he does appear in the same exact area, or world. I'd like to believe the Master of Masters told Yozora to save Sora. Sora as in our Sora, or Sora as in the girl he's looking for. He accidentally wound up in this place. Well, Yozora was dreaming after all. Dreams and the final world touch. Accidentally could mean that Yozora is dreaming up and he found himself in the final world. That's something the Master of Masters could have told him, oh, by the way, buddy, you wound up in this place accidentally, because you're dreaming, knowing the Master of Masters' personality. Losing to Yozora or winning gives us two endings. According to the findings of Key to Truth within the files of Kingdom Hearts 3's Remind, well, there's a true and bad ending. First, let's start with the bad ending, even if the true ending is what we're supposed to believe. Sora is defeated, crystallized. This crystal material reminds me of the theme of Fabula Nova Crystallis. This is a theme in which certain Final Fantasy games have crystals, which have divine qualities. One example of Nova Crystallis, Final Fantasy XIII. Some humans are given great power by a divine entity. These humans are known as the L'Cie, tasked to fulfill what they call focus. If they don't fulfill their focus, they are turned into monsters, known as the Seath. If they do fulfill their role, they turn to crystal, what we call crystal stasis. The human turns into an inanimate object. The human is not dead. Sora, in this case, in the bad ending, is not dead. He's simply asleep, which is represented by the blue color. There's also a legend saying that those turned to crystal are granted eternal life. Eternal as in, you get reawakened and then turned back to crystal. That's basically what we're looking at. Yozora touches the crystal statue. He says, I will save you. Thinking about the girl. If Sora is her name is my guess. He doesn't know who Sora, our Sora, is, so why would he care about our Sora? You gotta wonder about that. So Sora perhaps has something to do with the girl he's looking for. Okay, with the crystal and everything, what's the point? What does it symbolize? While going back to this scene in the nighttime of Final World, he did say, if it's fate that brought us here. Then he says, then my path is clear. So in a way we can say the focus of Sora is to battle Yozora. That's what it probably symbolizes. Now, Yozora, after Sora loses, we revert back to the final world, and then Yozora wakes up in a car, and he just looks around. Then we hear Sora's famous quote, I've been having these weird thoughts lately, like, is any of this for real or not? They're both saying it at the same time. As for the last phrase, none of this makes sense to me, only Yozora says it.
None of this makes sense to me.
Now, with that said, let's move on to the true ending. Before I proceed, you might ask, how come we see Sora's Station of Awakening here? Remember, in Kingdom Hearts 1, we had the same station. Well, it wasn't physically there, but Sora was there in some shape or form. What was he doing? He was dreaming. Since Yozora is dreaming here, I guess that's how it manifested. Or perhaps there's something that would make more sense in this case. Sora's Station of Awakening appearing in this scene could represent one entering the other's heart. Are we looking at Sora entering Yozora's heart, or the other way around? The first thing you would think about probably, oh, Yozora enters Sora's heart since we see Sora's station here. An example of such a thing happening in the series was the fight with Roxas within Sora's heart. What do we have within Sora's heart? His Station of Awakening. So entering one's heart in this scene is possible. It's not too crazy to think about. What I'm leaning more towards, Sora gets dragged into Yozora's heart. Yeah, we don't see Yozora's dive into the heart station. I mean, just seeing Sora's station is just a way of symbolizing what's happening here, that Sora's heart wound up within Yozora's. That could explain why the final world switches to this city with tall buildings. What this means, Yozora was able to manipulate the area to his own liking, because we're inside his heart. In this case, he did this to show Sora where he really wound up the first time. One can manipulate a world within their heart, An example of such a situation is Scala at Kylum with Xehanort when we were facing him. Xehanort morphing the whole world to this extent was something that he was capable of doing because we were inside his heart. Now this wasn't real Scala at Kylum, like I just said. It was a version within Xehanort's heart. We aren't sure about the current status of the real Scala at Kylum. So as I was saying about the true ending, he believes his powers aren't needed yet. We can guess him not needing his powers yet could have been something, say, the Master of Masters told Yozora. Like, if you lose, that means your power isn't needed yet. His power, Yozora's power, could indicate why the Master of Masters would even pick Yozora. I mean, it's not confirmed, it's pure speculation. It's all up in the air. I'm just saying this because the Master of Masters was spotted in this world. Sora gets transported to the final world, and at this point, Yozora wakes up from his dream, just like the bad ending. He wakes up to his driver this time. Sora's quote and Yozora are also in sync. It's like a reflection of these characters at this point. Speaking of reflection, I recall an interview with Yoko Shimomura about the music production of Kingdom Hearts 3. Let me bring up the quote. Yozoras Theme means Yoru no Tsubasa, Nightwing in German, but translating it in English as simply Nightwing or Mirror of Night would look too simple, and not fit his character at all, I feel. Because Yozora is a character with a different perspective of the world, I thought German for his song would fit perfectly. So here's a pro tip I give. When titling your compositions, focus on giving a title that justifies the feeling of your song, and also, don't fear using puns. The German name she was speaking of was Yozoras Theme, not Flüge. Going back to what I was saying, Yozora, by the way, means night sky, and Sora means sky. Both words translated from Japanese. The opposite of day, which is Sora, basically sky, is night. If we also include what Yoko Shimomura said about Mirror of Night, Yozora could very well be a parallel version of Sora. In other words, a mirror of Sora. Now, if Yozora doesn't really look like this, then why does he look exactly the same when he wakes up, you might say? Well, here's what I believe. Even in his world, when he's not dreaming, his physical form was already taken over. To what extent? I'd say to the extent of Riku as Ansem, where he was fighting Roxas. He basically unveiled the hidden dark powers of Ansem and took the shape of Ansem. We can say Ansem's fragment of his heart was within Riku, and that's why he looked like Ansem. So in this case with Yozora, from my understanding, there's probably a fragment of someone's heart within him. And because of that, the mysterious girl, Nameless Star, believes it's altered his personality. Yozora personally, although his appearance has changed, he might feel like he's still the same, but the girl he's looking for perhaps believes that Yozora has changed as a character because of this fragment that took over him. We honestly don't know much about Verum Rex, Yozora, and, the Nameless Star. So there's so many things we can speculate, and at the end of the day, I tried coming up with my own understanding, alright? In the bad ending, none of this makes sense to me. It was Yozora who said it. Now in the true ending, it's Sora who says it. Sora who goes back to the final world.
None of this makes sense to me.
Another cool thing about Yozora, what's with the logo on the shoulder side of his jacket? Looks like a skull with a crown and 2 kingdom keys or keyblades or generic keys. I don't think in this case that Sora represents God or a divine entity in their world. Merchandise which represents what they believe in their world. If you think about it, when he was told to save Sora, he wasn't really distraught by that information. The only thing I guess caught him by surprise was when he wondered why Sora was using Sora's name. Another thing, his earring, which you can spot in Data Greeting, which is pretty much the photo mode of Kingdom Hearts 3. Well, it looks to be a logo which is similar to Organization 13, or in other words, the Nobodies. A wild theory that could explain all this: Kingdom Hearts is a video game in their fictional world, just like how Verum Rex is a video game in our world, which is considered reality. What's happening here, pretty much, Since Kingdom Hearts is a popular video game in their world, let's say, they have a bunch of merchandise tied to that Kingdom Hearts video game. Now with that out of the way, we cannot just ignore the driver. Let's talk about this mysterious guy. The true ending certainly caught our attention when looking at these two things. The driver's voice. Impressive, is it not?
Impressive, is it not?
And the hairline. Who does it remind us of? Which character did many believe this driver to be? Luxor. Fun fact, Robin Atkins, voice actor of Luxor, confirmed over on Twitter that he voiced his character in this scene. This is the part where we can all start connecting the dots. The first scene from Remind. Luxor explains to Brig/Lushu that he's always taken orders from above, reflecting his type of character in this scene, calling Yozora Commander. As for the Japanese voice actor for Luxor, his voice sounds very similar. I think it's the same voice. Here's a comparison.
同窓会というわけでもなさそうだが、あれすごいですね。
Now at the end of this scene in Remind, Lushu does wonder who Luxor is. Nomura threw in this line for a reason, come on. Luxor could very likely be the driver. Also, the driver's voice is not credited. Clearly they want to keep the driver hush-hush. Now going back to this scene in KH3, Xemnas mentions that these guys originate from the Age of Fairy Tales, as ancient Keyblade wielders. For now, we're aware that Laurium, aka Marluxia, and Elrena, aka Larxene, originate from Union Cross. We still haven't seen Demyx nor Luxor from Union Cross. We might see them in a story update, we never know. If Demyx and Luxor were also Keyblade wielders, then perhaps they did originate from Union Cross as well. That was their point of origin. Let's not forget one thing, eventually in Union Cross, our characters, the Union leaders, will travel to another world. We're not there yet, but it's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. I mean, how do you explain Ventus being in the era of Union Cross? They're gonna travel sooner or later. Now our Keyblade wielders, Luxor and Demyx, who we haven't seen yet, could have traveled to Yozora's world instead, where they established their new lifestyles, with their Keyblade legacy behind them. Basically forgetting that they were Keyblade masters, maybe. If Ventus didn't remember his past during the time in Union Cross, it's possible that Luxor and Demyx also forgot who they actually were. The same applies for Marluxia in this scene in Kingdom Hearts 3. By the way, it was confirmed by Nomura that in this scene, Marluxia remembered himself as Laurium in Union Cross. So if Xehanort knew of such a place, the other side, it's likely he was interested in Demyx and Luxor for that reason, because they had a Keyblade legacy hidden within them. People who originated from the Age of Fairy Tales. What gives more weight to this? This last scene from Melody of Memory. Yensid mentions that ancient Keyblade wielders once crossed over to another world. Those ancient Keyblade wielders could have been Demyx and Luxor. Et voila. Maybe the foretellers, you might say. Maybe. I always believed when Lushu summoned them back in the epilogue, he summoned them back from the past. That would explain why the foretellers disappeared after the Keyblade War, because they got summoned by Lushu in the future. With that said, let's go back to the Nameless Star and the new information she gives us. So back to this scene in Melody of Memory, the Fairy Godmother explains that Nameless Star can open a path for them, and Riku can use the power of waking to reach this place. Sora abused the power of waking. He traversed worlds to reach hearts. He didn't traverse hearts to reach worlds, according to young Xehanort. So Riku in this scene, he's using the proper method, traversing the girl's heart to reach the other side. This place Riku will travel to, they believe it's possible Sora is there. A city with tall buildings. Exactly what he dreamt of. Quadratum, according to the Nameless Star. Kairi doesn't join Riku because she feels like she needs more training, and later on she decides to train under Master Aqua. Alright. Goofy and Donald are tasked to go back to Twilight Town, Radiant Garden, and the Land of Departure to ask people to halt their research after all the information that Kairi gave to Yensid. Mickey's task is to find out more about the fictional world, how it's related to the ancient Keyblade Masters, by starting with Scala et Kylum. I assume Yensid heard of this place from Xehanort. Yensid is a retired master after all. Now about Quadratum. Many of us had believed this place to be Shibuya, thanks to the 104 building, which in real life is 109 by the way. I mean, you aren't mistaken. In the opening cutscene of Verum Rex, we have a banner that strictly says Shibuya. So what quadratum could signify in this case? Perhaps it's a province with tall buildings, where Shibuya is a city within quadratum. This is just me trying to tie the banner Shibuya with quadratum. Fun fact, quadratum is square for Latin. Square. Square Enix. Nice. So now, we discuss the world of fiction, quadratum being part of it.
Where voices can't reach. The other side of our world. Of reality. Unreality. A fictional world.
We are now basically entering a new concept in the Kingdom Hearts series, a world of fiction or unreality. Let's try and understand what this new concept might possibly mean. Because so far we have the realm of light, worlds built from the light within children's hearts. After all, this recent scene with Luxor and the Master of Masters in Union Cross, Luxor reiterates that the Union leaders, or the Dandelions in this case, as a whole, are the cornerstone of the world's rebirth. You know, after what happened post-Keyblade War. This is post-Keyblade War, and what this scene implies? Luxor and the Master of Masters are keeping an eye on the Dandelions, who are currently residing within the data world of Daybreak Town. There's the Realm of Darkness, which is a manifestation of the darkness within people's hearts from many worlds. We have data worlds, the Dream Realm. All these, Ansem the Wise explains that they're on our side. All these worlds are manifested by the hearts of people. Light, darkness, data, dreams, memories. What else is left? The mind, or the soul of the human. In other words, their imagination. The mind or the soul is a powerful force in Kingdom Hearts. The lingering will is a primary example of that. Terra's mind took form in his armor. Why? Because his will to believe in defeating Xehanort was so strong, he was able to maintain a sense of himself. Human nobodies is another perfect example. Someone whose nobody form is a human means that they had a strong will as a person. Now what I'm trying to say here, the other side, or this fictional realm or world, in this case, is the manifestation of people's imagination. The power of the mind of children is what led to the creation of this fictional world. What does fiction mean in our reality? Fiction generally is a narrative form in any medium, consisting of people, events, or places that are imaginary. The theme we're exploring is imagination. Fiction is derived from one's imagination. Now in this imaginative world, considered fictional, we have tall buildings. A lot of them, skyscrapers. Riku dreamt up of this place. He was never there physically, he only saw it in his dreams, which is an essential part in trying to locate Sora. After all, it is one of the 3 keys according to the fairy godmother. In our reality, tall buildings or skyscrapers do have a symbolic meaning. Expedience, transcendence, ambition, and dominance. These are the principal reasons why tall buildings emerged and why they continue to be built. In short, what tall buildings represent is power. People in life want power. They see themselves dominating in their career, or whatever it is they wish to dominate. People wish to become rich, successful, powerful, fully ambitious. These are things that people would love to imagine themselves to be in. And what do we call that? Imagination. You imagine yourself being in this situation. Multiply that factor. Plus, add Kingdom Hearts lore on top. Well, the fictional world is a manifestation of what people imagine throughout their lives. If we take a look at Versus 13, the trailer from 2011, the beginning has the phrase, "This is a fantasy based on reality," which seems to imply imagination. And by the way, just going back to this trailer of Versus 13, it's way too obvious how Tetsuya Nomura is referencing what FF15 was supposed to be originally. I mean, these two scenes together, it looks too similar. It ain't subtle. As for Riku dreaming up this place, it could do with his heart connected to Sora, for sure. But dreams can also have meanings. To dream of a building represents a perspective on a situation. Higher floors may represent higher levels of understanding, and lower floors may reflect lower levels of understanding, stress, or fear. Buildings in a dream portray significant emotions regarding your problems and represent the changes you are making in your waking life. The building can also represent part of your personality, especially upstairs. Basically, floors of a building represent how you're feeling. Are you feeling sad? Stressed out? Are you happy? Are you comfortable? In this case, we have Riku walking on the lower floors, on the streets basically, staring upstairs. And who do we have upstairs on the roof? Yozora staring down onto Riku. It's as if Yozora is dominating this area. He's on top of the building, which symbolizes what some people desire in their lives, power. Riku's section, it's technically Shinjuku? So really, Yozora in this scene is simply a dream version of Yozora. Now this dream representation of buildings, it doesn't have to mean anything in Kingdom Hearts, but I just thought that the symbolic meaning of buildings could be something pretty cool to implement in the video. Now there's also one thing we shouldn't forget. Nomura's quote at the beginning of many Kingdom Hearts 3 trailers. This was perhaps already hinting at the new era for Kingdom Hearts. Don't assume your dreams are just a fantasy. If you can imagine a world, believe in it, and dive in. In other words, imagination is at play here. Then we have a scene in Remind, young Xehanort and the Master of Masters. One line stood out from the rest. People carry delusions of having power, but it's a lie. Delusions can be turned into a threat. Now honestly, Xehanort was referring to darkness pretty much in this scene, but those words stood out. People's imagination can be turned into a threat. Dreams can become a threat, aka nightmares. Darkness can be a threat, aka heartless. Light? Well, we have Lauriam dreaming of his sister Strelitzia wearing a white robe. That can mean that light can also be dangerous. Negative emotions, let's not forget, can be a threat, aka the unversed. Imagination can be a threat, maybe. This is what we're entering. The new era. Karma. This is a new term the series might explore. The word karma can be found behind the box of the video game Verum Rex. That's the story of the King of Truth. Reclaim your heart. After a long fight, weapons have brought great benefits for humanity, but the karma that sleeps in humans will accelerate further. In the light of the warhead in the night sky, they chose to fight while feeling the pain of their hearts. A journey without a place to return. The world is to all humans to turn a page. What is eternal bond? Karma that sleeps in humans will accelerate further. It sounds very interesting. Karma could be a byproduct of what people imagine. Whatever this karma is, they use it against people and bring upon chaos. If we're talking about a fictional world, it could be a new concept of an enemy. After all, we have the Heartless, derived from darkness. Nobody. Dream Eaters, derived from dreams. The Unversed, that originate from negative emotions. We have bugs in the data world. And now we have karma. This might not be the actual name of these new foes, but it could be the essence of these new foes. Light and darkness come from the heart. What threat comes from the mind, apart from emotion? Imagination, which later turns into karma, either bad or good. Now karma, universally, it's the cycle of cause and effect, either mentally or physically. A future event is caused by actions in the past. If you put the word fiction or imagination in the equation, it's like saying, if you imagine something good in the past, then that thing is going to happen in the future. If you imagine something bad upon someone, it might happen in the future. There is, after all, good and bad karma, like I just said. In religion, some might believe that bad and good karma follow through generations. This is perhaps more on the superstition side of karma. But imaginations throughout generations, in this case the children in Kingdom Hearts, all of their imaginative power gave creation to an imaginative world such as Quadratum. Another thing I'd like to add, since we just talked about the theme of fiction, imagination, and karma, is it far-fetched to believe that Yozora manipulating the final world was a result of his own karma? His imagination could have been at play here. That could have made the final world turn into this city with tall buildings. He imagined himself fighting Sora in this place. He imagined himself here, and paying close attention to the details, Everything looks digitized when this happens. Perhaps this is a glimpse of what's to come to the series, how one's imagination can give creation. Xehanort playing around with Scala at Kylum could have also been a form of foreshadowing. So to end off the video, we have a new ending phrase for the series, an oath to return. We are unsure what this could mean, but I feel like this has to do with the theme of promise. The whole thing about I will save you, or Sora telling the girl you just gotta believe, Riku believing that he's gonna find Sora. I mean, if we compare it to Kingdom Hearts Reconnect, I always saw that one as the theme of hearts being connected, or how everything gets reconnected to one thing in particular, Xehanort. But yeah, I think I've said plenty in the video, okay? If you watched the whole thing, you are super awesome. If you have your own theories, questions, or anything of such sort, don't be shy, leave it all in the comments section below. And as always, I've been Vivi, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time.